There's something peaceful about the dead of night. If you're something of a night owl, such as myself, there's no doubt the moonlight brings you solace, the darkness, a reprieve on the eyes after a long day of blinding sun. And yes, being English, I played that hit-the-ground-running introduction up a bit. No matter, we're here to explore another Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 curiosity, and it just so happens that for this one, we need the world to be asleep. It doesn't matter if we're blessed with the canopy of stars or if that's obscured by cloud. What counts is that we're out adventuring in the dark, for that's what we need to provoke an encounter that will serve as the topic for today's video. For it's out here when the long day has finally met its end and the land around us is thoroughly immersed in the shadow of the earth that we might meet her. An old woman wandering the trail at night, only carrying a modest lantern to illuminate her way. She has no name, but she knows ours. Yet, before this point, we've never met her. Who is she? Get yourselves nice and cozy, grab a brew, have a biscuit, get all nicely tucked in. To get to the bottom of this one, we're gonna have to go on a night ride, scouring the silent roads in the dark to find a puzzling being with no clear name, which absolutely makes the titling process difficult. Nevertheless, the namelessness within itself is so noteworthy that I've taken to referring to her as the Nameless Woman. To begin with, of course, that scene-setting introduction was not for show. I mean, it kind of was, but you know what I'm getting at. To find the mysterious woman in question, we must explore the roads of 15th century Bohemia at night. The days, after all, are simply too busy. So fortunately for you, to ensure that we wouldn't have to wait, I had this time-lapse pre-prepared. And now that it is comfortably nighttime, we can set out to catch ourselves yet another potentially mortality-defying entity masquerading as just another lone wanderer. To find this one, the optimal time and place is just after midnight and along the many roads of the two maps we can explore. But to further narrow things down in the Trotsky region, the optimal locations would appear to be the road passing the Troskowitz Cemetery and near the fast travel point for Rock Tower Pond on the western side of the map. As for in the Kuttenberg region, I hear the road passing Suckdal is a hotspot as well. However, I encountered her at both these hotspots in the Trotsky region. There's only one encounter to be had, but I encountered her twice to expire all dialogue options. But before we get to that, let's spare a thought for how interesting a sight the Troskowitz Cemetery is. I can't think of anything more peaceful than the resting place of the dead being a hot spot for fireflies. At night, this turf dedicated to the departed comes to life, illuminated by these gorgeous bugs in a way that can only be described as mesmerizing. I think then it's the perfect place to come into contact with someone representing the next world who has uncanny knowledge about us. While passing the cemetery, you may notice a woman with a lantern standing at the roadside humming a tune. It's already eerie within itself. The woman wears nondescript clothing, her face is very bog standard, and interestingly, she's at ease roaming bandit-infested wilderness at night. She's old and pale, and carries only a lamp. As you can imagine, this invites a conversation where things only get stranger.
What are you doing here?
I'm resting. There has been so much to do lately that even I, too, must rest before proceeding. Like peasants at harvest time. That is hard labor, too.
What kind of work do you do?
I assist people, sometimes with their pain, their suffering, their hatred. It varies from one soul to the next.
I don't understand.
No one truly comprehends my words until the time is ripe. And when they awaken and understand, There is no time to tell anyone. There is no time to explain it to anyone, because their time has come.
Time for what?
If I may, I have a question for you too.
You may.
We have seen each other many times. Why have you left it until now to stop by?
I don't remember seeing you before.
Really? I have always been with you whenever you... Well, never mind. Just consider how many times you have had me by your side. I am leaving now. Good luck, Henry of Skalitz.
You know my name? And you know where I'm from?
I was there. It kept me very busy.
After the brief conversation, she simply wanders off, humming her tune. She'll wander in the direction of the nearest boundary of the map, and if we follow her, she will continue to hum, wandering through the dark with but a humble lantern to illuminate her path until she leaves the map and simply cannot be followed anymore. A very strange encounter indeed, but one that leaves us with plenty to gnaw on. As I've already alluded to, there's something about this old lady that makes her seem somewhat out of place. Roaming the wilderness at a time when no doubt the unruly are more active isn't something to be taken lightly, yet this lady is armed exclusively with a lamp, roaming the land as the majority of Bohemia sleeps. Considering the social climate of 15th century Europe and the prevalence of superstition in society, this alone would be considered peculiar. So Henry asking "what are you doing" as an opener makes perfect sense. He thinks the lady is insane, while also rather ironically roaming the night. That detail more or less immediately gets lost in the dialogue as the woman's words make her all the more intriguing. She claims to be resting in between one bout of hard work and the next, speaking with a relaxing, disarming tone. She outlines that her work entails helping people, and the nature of that varies from one soul to the next. She also expresses that the nature of her words cannot be understood until the time is ripe, until somebody's time has come, when there's no longer any time to tell anyone. Then, despite Henry pressing for more detail, the elderly woman turns the conversation on Henry, asking why he hasn't stopped by before, yet the two supposedly having seen each other many times. That's where things get really interesting. Henry has never seen this woman before. This is our first encounter with her, something the woman finds hard to believe, implying that she's always been with Henry, but doesn't clarify what moments that pertains to. Not that she necessarily needs to. Then she leaves, bidding us farewell and addressing Henry by name without that information ever being exchanged, explaining her knowledge by claiming she was at Skalitz and it kept her very busy. I admit we've done this the sluggish way, but I don't think it takes much brain power to figure out what she's referring to. Skalitz is a formative part of Henry's journey, serving as the start of Kingdom Come Deliverance, and it's no doubt a bloody origin. The sacking of Skalitz resulted in no shortage of death, so the idea that Skalitz kept this woman very busy might suggest she's referring to that. As such, her assisting of people who only comprehend her words when their time has come might be granted sense through that lens. Furthermore, the woman claims she and Henry have seen each other many times, whenever Henry did something, though she did not elaborate what. Yet if we look at Henry's journey since Skalitz, he's become a warrior, leaving a lot of death in his wake, killing bandits, cumans, and those who align with King Sigismund, sending people to their maker. In a lot of these kill or be killed scenarios, death has been on his side, and to revisit the strange woman's wording,
Just consider how many times you have had me by your side.
with that in mind, I think it's very clear this woman is some variety of manifestation of death.
You sit there so serenely as you tell me such things. You're a little scary. You know that?
I scare you? You need not fear me. I don't hurt anyone. I only help. It is that which comes before me you should fear, not me.
A popular personification of death in Western culture, of course, is the Grim Reaper, regularly depicted as a skeletal man carrying a scythe. This personification of death appears to be descended from an art style known as Danse Macabre, also known as the Dance of Death. It's an art style that allegorically portrays animated skeletal figures. That can be observed in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 in the death screens. Should you be sent to face the judgment of the Lord for any number of reasons, you'll be met by a death screen that shows 3 dancing skeletons. The style gained popularity in the 14th and 15th centuries as the devastating bubonic plague swept across Europe. Its purpose is to serve as a reminder that death is the only guaranteed outcome in life. Our egos may not like it, but we will die. It is a certainty. That depiction of the abstract concept of death, however, was far from the first. Medieval Europe had a plethora of folklore personifications. So just because this lady isn't a tall skeletal figure armed with a scythe, doesn't mean we aren't dealing with death itself, or something to do with it. But first, let's look at the other evidence that might suggest this woman is otherworldly. First, in interactions, you'll notice the game gives us a prompt to talk to her, but doesn't provide her with a name, when every other character you meet has one. That can usually be seen at this point, and in failing that, they have some variety of placeholder. Here, there's nothing. To me, that's something the game wants us to notice. Second, there's her seeming immortality. She cannot be attacked. If you fire an arrow at her, it will go through her. Don't scrutinize my aim, but it is corroborated that no matter what you try or how successful you are, she will not take damage or even as much as react. Her course and pace are unaffected. It's like she's not even there at all. So if we aren't dealing with some otherworldly being, she at the very least is not physically there. Or perhaps her form is not as physical as it seems, comfortably eliminating the notion that we're dealing with some crazy woman who's decided to go and rip the piss out of Henry, though that is entirely believable. And though I'm not referencing a one-for-one scenario, occurrences that turn out to be that do happen. Other game info that might imply that we're dealing with far more than just an elder with a sense of humour is the description we're given if the encounter is instigated through fast travel. We're told the following. A middle-aged woman is standing at the roadside. She has a serene, almost reverent look on her face, and should we accept the encounter, the woman glares at you piercingly. The intention that the player will receive the mysterious woman in this way is not just indicated, it's bloody obvious. And her dialogue, while it dances around the point, isn't so vague that it actually leaves a lot to the imagination. So I'm beyond confident we're dealing with some variety of personification of death. The game describes her as having a reverent, serene look and a piercing glare. She speaks with a detached, universally, impenetrably calm cadence, and she implies she assists people, and the nature of that assistance depends on what their soul needs when their time comes. Furthermore, her words don't imply morality. She doesn't judge Henry for the people he's killed. She doesn't suggest her broader work is to pass judgment on those with negative emotion in their hearts. I wouldn't go so far as to say she's an abundantly comforting figure, but for the most part, she lacks menace, unless you tell her she's kinda scary, in which case she will momentarily play into your fear before diffusing it, claiming we should fear what comes before her and not her. My interpretation, of course, is the process of dying is scarier than being dead. Anyway, now that we've explored the encounter and are 99% certain we're dealing with an incarnation of death, supposedly she's even named as death in the game files, not that I in my limited knowledge can confirm that, we can turn our focus to identifying which folklore variant of the amorphous psychopomp we're dealing with. Firstly, the word for death in Czech, smrt, is a grammatically feminine noun. You will have to forgive my pronunciation, I am not remotely familiar with Czech, and there's only so much conditioning I can put my already inhibited mouth movements through if I want this video published at some point this decade. Anyway, the idea of death as a noun being feminine in Czech is a huge tell as to why a personification of that concept would follow suit. This is by no means a hard rule, but death being a woman in Czech folklore would agree with the grammar of the language, so death being portrayed as such is not irregular. So maybe that's it, maybe the woman is just death and that's where the light mystery ends. And I'm inclined to believe that is the case. All the evidence points to her being a rather basic and obvious Grim Reaper variant, the Czech word for which, of course, is smrtka, and it would seem a female psychopomp under that name, or simply the shorter version, exists in both Czech and Slovak folklore, portrayed as a skeletal or old woman. And while the encounter we can have is down a scythe, she most certainly has the appearance of an older woman. So for the most part, it would fit. But what if there's a hint in the mix to something deeper? I'm not going to argue that this fits with brilliance, but in my research, naturally a few times I found my way to Reddit where people were discussing this encounter, and one theory I saw thrown around countless times was the name Marana. In case you haven't noticed, I have officially bailed on pronunciation, but basically this Marana figure is a Slavic pagan deity associated with winter, death, dreams, and rebirth, who can appear as an old woman. Much like a personification of death, she isn't viewed as entirely evil, rather a necessary force in the cycle of life. Being paganism, it is hard to find reliable written sources published online on this subject, so naturally I turned to a Ukrainian fellow in my Discord server who seems trustworthy enough, and he very kindly gave me an overview of some of what he knows, and the conclusion we came to is death as seen in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 isn't entirely identical to this goddess of death, among other things. The way I understand it is Marana is a seasonal deity, becoming the goddess of death in winter, as part of a cycle that repeats annually. So for her to manifest as death, it would theoretically need to be a colder month for starters. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 never specifies what time of year it's set, however, considering the sun rises at 5 AM and sets at 9 PM as outlined by the waiting wheel, that would place events at pretty much the height of summer, and nothing suggests this mysterious woman's role varies depending on what time of year it is. She simply goes where she's needed, as she says to us in dialogue.
Where are you going?
Wherever I am needed, where my help is required.
That being said, the woman does make a curious seasonal reference.
There has been so much to do lately that even I, too, must rest before proceeding. Like peasants at harvest time, that is hard labor too.
This is interesting because harvest time is usually right before the cold months begin. But aside from that, I couldn't find any really strong links between this Marana figure and death as seen in the game, except for the odd post and article here and there claiming another name for this deity is Smrtka, and that name being assigned to this deity does seem to be more particular to Czechia. I also found an anecdote in which she sent somebody to the afterlife, but that was less common again, so I couldn't gain particular clarity on if she functions as a Grim Reaper-like at all. Only the suggestion that she might, as an aspect of a broader deity, the nature of which is dependent on what time of year it is, with her representing the whole cycle of life reflected in the season and not just death in winter. There's also an association with dreams and hallucinations, one of her names being Mara, a word that in other contexts can refer to a malevolent spirit that causes nightmares. Related or otherwise, there is folklore that alludes to the idea that visits from Marana in a dream can cause people to die in their sleep. The reason I bring this up, of course, is because over the plot of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Henry is plagued with nightmares, showing his grief, torment, and guilt. though it must be said he doesn't mysteriously die in his sleep, so it does kind of sever the link, but it also makes me question how much of this encounter is real. After all, it's like I said, this woman cannot take damage. After the brief conversation, she simply walks away, impervious to any attacks you might try on her, unreacting to anything in the environment. She simply walks away and leaves the map. I can't help but wonder, considering how realism-driven the game is, if she's a hallucination of Henry's. At the start of the game, the guy takes a serious beating, including, but not limited to, falling off a cliff. This is far from the first physical trauma he experiences across his journey, but it's noteworthy in the sense that it made him delirious. It's worth noting it's much more prominent here. Who's to say far less obvious symptoms couldn't manifest later on? That would satisfyingly explain how Henry can meet death in a game with authenticity at its heart. It may be real, but there's a backdoor to explain how it might not be. If we look at it from that perspective, the best question to ask, of course, is what does Henry believe? Is it likely his upbringing made him familiar with a personification of death specifically, or just vaguely? Well, he begins his journey an illiterate son of a blacksmith raised in a mining town. Though the two aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, he's a devout Christian rather than a Slavic pagan, and he exists in a nation where grammatically, death is a feminine noun. So logically, death appearing as a woman and that just being the end of it would make sense to him. So maybe, despite the idea floating of being part of some broader deity, that's just it. The only question we cannot answer is, did we really just encounter death on the road? Or is this mysterious, nameless woman just a fragment of Henry's broken imagination? The only way to answer that is to ask yourself, what do I believe? Other theories I've seen floating around online imply that the woman is the Virgin Mary. I think there are too many obvious death implications for that to be the case. I'm personally convinced the entity we can encounter is some variety of the Grim Reaper. More accurately, a personification of death. Vague, with links to broader Slavic folklore if you can dream up a connection hard enough, but ultimately just that, and if you want more evidence to that fact, she can be encountered, most often, nearby to where death occurs. Firstly, she references that she was at Skalitz, where a massacre occurred at the start of the first game. There's your first clue. She can be found nearby to the Troskowitz Cemetery, a local place of rest. She can be met nearby to the camp where Henry, Hans and their company is attacked at the very start of the game. On the road to Samine, where a massacre can occur over the course of the narrative, though the player can prevent it. Another hot spot for encounters that I'm aware of is nearby to Sukdal in the Kuttenberg region, where of course a great siege takes place towards the back end of the game. And supposedly, though I'm not entirely sure where I read this, she can be seen in the crowd if Henry is executed for his crimes. I had a scan and couldn't find anyone who raised my eyebrow necessarily. There were a few maybes, but then they started jeering like the rest of the crowd, which wouldn't seem on brand. And I'm not entirely sure who I'd be debunking, it may very well be myself. But no, I did not find anything obvious here. That on top of everything else, I can conclude that this woman follows the dying, because she is death. The only thing I cannot answer is she really there? Or is Henry's brain yanking his pizzle? But with that, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends and all that wonderful stuff. It would be massively appreciated. Be sure to fill me in the comments if you think there are greater links to folklore and the like that I'm missing. Otherwise, feel free to let me know what you'd like to see investigated within Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 next. And if you fancy joining us on Discord, follow the QR code on screen now. You're more than welcome. It's a very friendly place. Kinda chill. But with any luck, I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point. Until next time, take care and goodbye.